up, y'all? Yeah, soundtrack, what's poppin', baby? Woo! If y'all ain't know, I go by the name of Lupe Fiasco, representing that first and 15. Yeah, and this one right here, I dedicate this one right here to all my homies out there grinding. You know what I'm saying? Legally and illegally. You know what I'm talking about? So, check it out. First got it when he was 6, didn't know any tricks. Matter of fact, first time he got on it, he slipped, landed on his hip and busted his lip. For a week he had to talk with a lisp like this. Now we can end the story right here, but shorty didn't quit, it was something in the air. Yeah, he said it was something so appealing, he couldn't fight the feeling, something about it. He knew he couldn't doubt it, couldn't understand it, brand it since the first kick.
Alright, I'm here with Faye. Thank you for coming on my podcast. Faye also wrote a book. And, you know, why I brought her on the podcast is because I remember hearing a story. I was like, yo, that's pretty badass. Like, no one talks about that, you know what I mean? Like, no one really talks about that. And, you know, through the lens of a Muslim woman. But at the same time, you're not the traditional Muslim woman. You know, you're very, you know, you've adapted to modern culture. You know, you're into style. So, like, you know, first of all, what brought you to write that book?
So the book, just some background on it, it's called Unveiled, and what it deals with is just trying to look at different women's perspectives in the Middle East and outside, but with some connection to the Arab world. And the reason that I wanted to write it was mainly because I felt growing up that I didn't fit in with this perception that society was giving me about what the Arab woman was supposed to look like, what she was supposed to act like, what she was supposed to do. And I wanted women my age and otherwise to feel like there was a voice and there was a place for them to share their ideas, their thoughts, their stories. So I wanted this book to give the opportunity to these women to share what they've done with their lives and to show that there are actually unique versions of Arab women out there. And we all have voices, we all have stories, and we're just as distinct and unique as any other people. So, yeah.
Oh, of course. How was your experience with the interviews? Did you find that people had a similar outlook to you?
I think it was actually really interesting. I think my favorite part of the entire book process was just getting the chance to talk to people. And a lot of what you mentioned yourself was that you start off with a topic, like in your own book, and then you just end up talking about the most random shit ever.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I think that there were specific times where I felt like I got really personal with people, and they started telling me about their families and about like personal things that they had to deal with and overcome. And I really love that. Just getting to that emotional part where you really connect with a person beyond the superficial details is really cool. And I feel like right now our world and stuff lacks a lot in that, where you just need to get to know the person that's sitting right across from you or like around you.
Right. And, you know, do you think, especially now with, you know, obviously with Trump, do you think that's really harmed our perception in terms of, you know, people of different colors and, you know, especially in the beginning, he wanted to get rid of immigration completely, and, you know, how did you respond to that? And were you nervous? Were you like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be ostracized even more? You know?
So in Jordan, I was just like another woman, another Arab girl, it doesn't matter. But then I came here and I was suddenly looked at as like, oh, you're a minority. And that's how you're going to be labeled. And it was either that or was the complete opposite of that, where they just assumed I fit this stereotype of like this like the Arab that you often see in like movies that's overly like everything pretty much. Right. So it was really interesting trying to get through that. And then with Trump happening, everything sort of got very scary for a while. Mostly because, so even part of the research for my book was seeing how many cases of like violence were happening against Muslim women and against Arab people in general in the United States. And there was a hike. And this is something that you see in the numbers and the statistics in general. And while people say that it wasn't necessarily like something that was you can see it next to you on a day-to-day basis. It was more that people felt that because of things that Trump was saying, that they had more of a right to speak out and say more racist things, to say things that were specifically directed at you in a very negative way, or act out.
Right.
And I have a lot of friends actually here who, they're not Arab, but they're Muslim. They wear the hijab, and they went to a basketball game at Georgetown, and they got cups thrown at them.
What?
Yeah, for being Muslim. And this was during the time period that Trump was coming out, and you were hearing a lot of hate on the news. And it was really, like, just to hear that, to finally see that was crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can sometimes pass, which has been like useful to me. That's like been a privilege, I guess, but it also sucks because of the fact that like a lot of people just don't have that. A lot of people just like, you will get labeled, you will get stigmatized, and you can't do anything about it. There was this sense of like almost dread that came with like the knowledge that if a person was leading the United States and they had this type of perspective on a group of people, which I belong to, it was like, well, what's going to happen to everyone that I know, every member of my family, everything that was happening. But most of all, my thoughts were with like the refugee crisis, and with all the people that were essentially being kicked out of their countries and in search of homes, in search of something, some form of like stability, which they had lost. So that was a lot of like what I was thinking about, what I was like freaking out about. And me and my roommate were just a lot more conscious about who we told people where we're from and what religion we are. Until this day, whenever I'm in like an Uber, for example, and someone asks me something, like where I'm from, or why do I look a certain way, or things like that, or they assume I'm Arabic, then I'll always try to avoid it in whatever way I can, because I've just had some really like bad experiences when people find out.
I feel like we've almost gone backwards, because in Australia that's how it was.
Yeah.
It was openly racist, and unfortunately you can't go and talk to a teacher because they think the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what you are. But over here it's like we've backpedaled, and now we're going back to everything's about color now.
Yeah.
You're seen as your color first, and then who you are, the contents of your character, and it's really troubling.
You have to fit into a box.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're dangerous. That's just how it is. Yeah.
When they associate these stereotypes, which one are offensive, and two, they're generalized so much, and it's like that's not who you are. We're all individual people.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless of what we look, we didn't choose what we look like. But this is why I love fashion. Right? This is why I love
individuality.
Fashion. Right. It's individuality, and it's really a chance to showcase to the world, this is you. I mean, if you're wearing sweatpants, that's your mood.
No, yeah,
that's
you're
your
right.
mood.
You're right. No, it is. Yeah.
And if you're dressed up, feeling good, then you're like, all right, he or she's feeling confident. Okay, like that's the one decision that we have in life that is
totally control and like
it's ownership. For once, we have ownership of something, and it is sad. And when you see like the MAGA hats, that's also a decision, and that's why a lot of the times they are ostracized because you don't know why they're wearing the hat, and some of them really believe in racial supremacy, which is terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
And extremely sad if you think about it in the 21st century.
No, exactly. You would think that such a concept would not even apply nowadays.
Yeah, like this, all that bigger fish to fry.
Exactly. Like we should probably be dealing with a lot of other problems. Yeah, like even climate change. Like, just like everything that's being said about climate change and like Trump's opinions on it, and it's just there's a lot. And there's so many problems.
Well, what do you think about climate change?
Well, I mean, I believe in it for one. I think it exists. I think that we need to start making a change, and I think that people really need to be more aware of the carbon footprint that they're leaving on this planet. But I think that it's really hard. Like, we can talk about it a lot, but we don't ever put it into action.
Right.
And I think everyone's at fault of that. I think I'm at fault of that too. And I think another problem is that a lot of times we speak before we listen.
Yes.
And I feel like there's already a lot of really good ideas out there, a lot of good changes that are being made to actually help fight climate change. But people are everyone's just sort of talking over one another and not really seeing that there are things that are being put in place. We just need to support those things and push them forward rather than all just clamoring. But no, for sure. I don't know.
Have you ever thought about going to the government sector and being voice for young Arab women, or maybe doing that in a different space, maybe going to in the business world and being that that leader for them?
I've considered it, but I honestly think it's hard given I don't have an American citizenship. So I feel like if I speak here, like I cannot speak for Arab women in the United States. I can only speak so far as what I have been told and speak based off of things that people have told me that I've interviewed or that I've researched from statistics. But my experiences are different to those that grew up here, for example. And to go to the government, I think it would be difficult unless I have something actually set up. But through like writing the book, for example, I wanted to get that started, and then working on this podcast as well on the side, and trying to find ways to reach out to people to make sure that whether or not, like, wherever you're from, whatever your experiences are, that there is a place for you to share your story.
Yes.
And I think that beyond all else, that's what's most important, whether you're Arab or not, honestly. And I'm like, because that's what I want to make clear. Like while I started off with my focus being on like giving Arab women the chance to get this step to like stand up to share their experiences, I also feel the same way for every person. Like I feel like we don't listen to each other.
Right. Yes.
And we really need to.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, and I even within the book, it's not. That book was less about politics and more about people.
No, yeah, exactly. In the end, everything gets down to it. It's the people behind it all.
Yeah. And it was about the conclusions were like, we need to be more empathetic. We need to listen more. It became more of a book about psychology than it did about politics.
Exactly.
So I was like, we really just need to listen.
Yeah.
And it feels good to actually be listened, and at times it's tough, because everyone wants to speak, but to take time and to listen.
Exactly.
By listening, you get to empathize.
Yes, exactly.
By empathizing, you get to learn about yourself. Someone told me to read fiction books.
Yes.
To learn about empathy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool because I don't read fiction.
I grew up obsessed with fiction. I think I'm still in love with fiction. And I feel like a lot of my morals, a lot of my values and outlook on life came from that, which is weird to say because it's like, oh, you learned things from elves and dragons. But it's like, most of the inherent values that we see that we want, like, you see them in these books, and you really get to live through the characters and their experiences, and you see how they react to certain things. And it's very introspective as a kid to learn that and to read that and just imagine yourself in all of that. But on the topic of listening, there's like the homeless population, for example, in DC.
Yes.
It's extremely apparent, but when it gets down to it, a lot of what the problem is that these men and women and children, they're all on the streets, and a lot of people don't treat them like human beings anymore. I feel like, so a lot of the people, I've actually talked to a lot of people as part of a class. They brought in several people who have been part of like some program with homelessness helping programs, or even just experiencing homelessness for themselves and coming in and sharing their experiences. And a lot of the problem goes back to them not feeling like they're listened to or feeling invisible. And majority, like several of the people, especially at Georgetown, they're actually veterans. And what we need to do is we just need to take a little bit of time every day. Like when they say something to us, even if you don't have anything, acknowledge their existence. Just like be like, I'm sorry, sir, but have a good day. I don't have any cash on me, or even try to help them out if you can. And I think just listening to them, asking what their name is, acknowledging that they are a human being, goes a very, very long way. Because after a while, if you're just on the street and no one sees you and you start to feel invisible, you will stop thinking you're human too, which leads to a lot of the issues that they're experiencing right now.
We should do a project that focuses on the homeless. And like before the podcast and all that stuff, we first make a video.
Did talk,
I remember that was actually really insightful at the library when you said it wouldn't be listened to as well. And I was like, that's really powerful, because if you think about it, our instinct is, all right, give them some cash. And then some people think, oh, they're just going to buy alcohol, but really,
they're not.
I mean, we can't assume that.
Exactly,
And loneliness is the ultimate prison cell.
Exactly.
And I think that would be really cool. Actually, at some point in the semester, we can like make a really good video about going to homeless people around the Georgetown
Sitting
area.
and having a conversation with them.
Just talking.
Yeah, just talk.
talking.
Yeah, like maybe like get them a sandwich. Sit by them. Like get them a sandwich. You guys can eat. You guys can talk. And just like learn their name, learn their story, hear about them. It's crazy because honestly, a lot of them just have these really amazing stories about what they've been through and how they got to where they were.
Yeah.
And they're all like we just need to give them a chance. A lot of them are very smart, capable individuals that life just got really unlucky for them.
Yeah.
And life does that. And that's where the empathy comes from. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So once you talk.
That'd be really cool. And I'm curious, like, what did happen? You know, what was the big barrier in that life? You know, was it, you know, sometimes it's not addiction. Sometimes it's the family life.
Yeah.
You know, and that'd be really interesting to investigate that.
My professor brought in once a friend that he had met. Also, he was homeless at one point, and he was a veteran from the Vietnamese War, and he came back here with a heroin addiction and like a coke addiction and all of these problems. And he came into the class and he told us his entire story, and he described how he was one of those soldiers because he was shorter and slightly smaller build. They would essentially tell him to be inside of these caves and go all the way to the thinner size, and then he would have to set up bombs. So he would be laying there in the dark for a week on end or days on end in guts, like just on him. And the only way him and several of the other soldiers could deal with that is through drugs. And I obviously don't have the actual evidence for this, but he was telling us that the U.S. government would be the ones that would be funding the drugs to them.
Wow.
That they would be sending them all of these like narcotics and stuff to be able to deal with the shit that they were going through. And us as like students just listening to all of this, and then it's just crazy. And then he came back, and in the process, because of his drug addiction, he lost his wife, he lost his family, his son stopped talking to him.
Jeez.
And then you have homeless shelters too. You would assume homeless shelters are a way for a lot of the people in the streets to get away from the streets, right? No, because if you go to a homeless shelter, a lot of times your stuff will get stolen, your shoes will get taken off your body, your bag will be taken, or you'll use the shower and you'll get ticks or you'll get crabs, and then you won't be able to. So that happened to him. He showered and he used the beds, and he came out with more problems than he did going in. So people will choose to freeze out in the cold instead of going to a shelter because they're like, it'll be worse off if I do.
It's literally safer. It's safer for them.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really troubling.
Yeah. So there's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah. And obviously, again, not the expert on any of this, but these are just like stories that I've heard simply by talking to people.
Yeah. And I think it's important to hear these stories and to amplify them, you know, because they need a voice. And that's an interesting perspective because you don't think about that, you know, and that's really sad. I hope that, you know, moving forward, especially politicians, look at that. We don't need to be in politics to make change.
Yes, I agree.
You know, we can do that ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, again, like through entrepreneurship, through innovation, through projects like these, any person can make change.
Exactly.
It's just difficult for people to realize that, oh, they do have that ability to do that because they were never told that they could, and they were never taught that. So, I don't know. I mean, I think you're doing great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, like, what made you, like, stand out? And, I mean, on your own, you know, like, you chose to not let life, you know, handcuff you. You know, you broke out of that.
I think I grew up in an interesting household. I feel like I grew up a lot faster than most people would just because of some experiences that I went through. But I also had a multi-ethnic family. So my mom she's Middle Eastern, but the dad that I grew up with, he was Swedish, and we lived in Jordan, but I was born in Canada, and there was a lot of other stuff. So I just grew up very exposed to very different cultures and things. And through fiction as well, the combination of like reading a lot of fiction books and all of these cultural influences and religious ones too, I was just interested to see how people cross over. Like just like after everything, like we talked about this, it goes down to the humans part, it goes down to the people and their stories, their abilities, how they cross. And the smallest thing in your day, the smallest connection that you have with a person can change something.
Right.
So majorly, and it just reverberates essentially through your entire life.
Of course.
I think that because of these experiences because I had these like very weird exposures growing up that I never really felt like I belonged to one or the other. So I was like, wait, am I really the only person who's like this? I don't think so. There must be other people, but no one was talking about it. And I feel like a part of the Middle Eastern culture specifically is that a lot of things you keep to yourself, and it's like within your family, there's a lot about how you are perceived, how your family's perceived. So you never really saw like YouTubers or people talking about their experiences like growing up, especially girls. So I wanted to try to see if there was more of a place for that right now.
Because that's really admirable in that you didn't have that role model. So in a sense, you took it upon yourself to really make that change, and now you're the role model.
I know.
Yeah? That's cool. You know, that's really cool.
I mean, I don't know if I'm a whole role model, but I'm just trying to create a space, trying to help at least contribute my small part if I can, just to give that chance. Because
100%.
I mean, yeah, like I couldn't Google anything growing up about like what to do in this situation. Like I don't know, and like because you're always thinking about like, oh shit, how's like my family gonna take this? How's the culture-wise, religion-wise, all this other stuff that you think of, and it's very hard to convey this to people if they haven't grown up in that type of environment.
Yes.
Or if they don't know what it is to experience like societal pressures, family pressures, things like that, and then how to like balance all of those things and fulfilling those things while also trying to be like a modern teenager or like going through puberty and things like that. So it was really interesting trying to like explore that.
How was Georgetown in terms of your journey towards self-exploration? Like, was that beneficial to you, and especially the people that you met?
So I think, initially I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to the US or not. A lot of my friends ended up in London or in Jordan, and I felt like I wouldn't grow as much if I went to a place where everyone I knew was. So it was a very last minute decision of like, no, I want to like be dropped in a place in an environment that I've never been exposed to before, and to try to figure out how I would deal in that situation. Something that my mom would always tell me, which her dad always told her, was that you only truly know a person by seeing how they act in uncomfortable situations.
Right.
And I feel like you are only ever going to grow in the case where you put yourself in uncomfortable situations and you try to find a way to grow and adapt to them. So that was mostly my goal, and I think Georgetown did that for me. I think it was new people, new culture, new place, and just being so far away from home and any form of safety net. Like, that was freaky. At the beginning, I was like, I don't know what the hell I am getting myself into.
Up the deuce for the south and the north. Boys talking down, don't make me pull out the chopper. I chunk up the deuce for the south and the north. Boys talking down, I leave them on the streets dead. I chunk up the deuce for the south and the north. Boys talking down, I got them diamonds in my mouth.
Well, it's that grind gripper from Houston, Texas. That bar sipper, that bar no flex. I'm straight up out of that Swisher house where G the ass right out of check. So check the neck, check the wrist. I'm baller status from head to toe. My jewelry shop sell more grills than